Hello everyone, today we have quite sad, but very interesting stories. Do not forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy watching. Story 1 from user Manlike Realities. Dumped at the doorstep of a youth shelter after my mum was hospitalized and dad was in prison. I wasn't a super bright teenager, but had enough sense to spend my last 20 on pepper spray and padlocks for my stuff. Predictably, people's stuff went missing all the time. I could write an essay on the issues in the public welfare system, ranging from the macro-level lack of funding to the micro-level incompetent or burnt-out staff. There was violent substance use and sexual assault in crisis accommodation. But what bothers me 10 years later is the sheer stupidity of some adults who are meant to guide at-risk teenagers. I would ask my social worker questions like, are there places which can help me with food this week? How do I write a resume? And that social worker would vaguely shrug and offer relaxation techniques and mindfulness strategies. Look, 3 people got arrested at this shelter last week. No amount of relaxation techniques are going to calm me down. I'm guilty of doing stupid and irresponsible things as a teenager, but eventually finished high school and then 3 university degrees. I actually work for the same system that I was and am disappointed in. And there are so many practical resources available. They're underutilized because staff don't even know they're out there. If I had just a single adult to help me with the most simple tasks as a kid, it would have been so much easier when you're a kid. You just don't know how university loan applications, taxes, budgeting, etc. works. Or at least I didn't, and everybody assumes that you do. Because they do. Like I had no idea that in my country, the Department of Housing can pay for your rental bond. I stayed in a homeless shelter for an extra 12 months to save up $900 to pay for the bond of a shitty apartment. Extra months of broken sleep. Men trying to pick the lock to my door. Residents hyped up on ice last year. There was a 16-year-old girl on the train having a meltdown and making a public scene. She was clearly drunk and people were avoiding her. She started screaming that she missed her period, and does anybody want to pay for her termination? She phrased it as a joke, or a way to get money, which I did not give. But I guess she repeated it enough that I wondered if it was true. We got to talking, and I referred her to a social service, downloaded a list of resources in her catchment area, and saved links and forms on her phone about how to arrange her own healthcare cards, since she's over 15. So that she can visit a bulk billing GP on her own and get tested in my country. The P-test from a pharmacy is about $15, but a pregnancy blood test ordered by your GP is free. We discussed different options that her GP might outline and other things that might be helpful. I know as well as anyone else that it's not always that straightforward, especially with 30 patients in your caseload and juggling them with a million other priorities. But in the biopsychosocial framework of health, where biological, psychological, and social factors are proposed to impact physical and mental health, we severely underestimate the impact of social circumstances. We let these kids down all the time, and it's preventable. Story 2 from user RandomK300. For some reason or another, my mother hated me as a little girl. I could never understand why she treated me so much worse than my 3 other siblings, and I would often go up to my grandmother and ask her, why doesn't my mama love me? She never could give me a straight answer, and would tell me your mama loves you, in the only way she knows how that answer confused me. Because she loved my siblings just fine. Disclaimer, her love was toxic F, and she did a different type of damage to my other siblings now. When I say that my mother treated me badly, it started out with her picking fights with me. She would constantly nitpick at everything I did, chastising me, and at the end of the day, punishing me harshly for something that could have been a gentle scolding when I got older. She started cussing at me and calling me names. She would often ignore me for days on end, and when she would talk to me, it would be to make me the butt end of a bad joke, or to tell me she hated me. Yes, my mother looked me dead in my eyes and told me she hated me. Disclaimer 2, she was a drug addict and alcoholic, and she loves to claim all the emotional abuse she put me. Though as a child, was the effects of the drugs, and it wasn't even that bad. It was things like that that really began to tear at me after a while. All sorts of terrible things she did to me growing up. The terrible things she said, and how she ignored me constantly. All of it very different than how she treated my other 3 siblings. She was very close with one of my brothers and my sister. She would spend time with them, constantly take them anywhere, buy them anything that they wanted, and it made me resent them. My sister would sometimes rub it in my face that Mom loved her more. It was her way of having power over me, and it was one of the things that made my rage bubble over on innocent people. I just wanted to be loved and accepted. I wanted to be cared for and cherished as a child should be. And when I didn't get that, I plotted on how I was going to get her love and affection in my screwed up mind. I thought that if I got rid of my older brother and younger sister, I would be one of the only people left for her to love. I planned on killing my brother. How screwed up is that it wasn't just some thought that passed through my head. It was a constant idea, a plan that I was putting into place to end his life so that I could make room in my mother's heart. For me, I feel ashamed writing it out. It was a dark time in my life, and I was also incredibly mentally ill. My brother was addicted to pain medications, and my parents were trying desperately to get him clean at the time. Ironically, at the same time, he was going on a drug-induced rampage. My sister had shattered her leg on a trampoline. She was on some pretty heavy pain pills, and while my mother was doing everything in her power to keep my brother away from the drugs, she would leave my sister and her drugs in my care. So one day, while my mother was out dealing with my brother and my sister was sleeping, I took the rest of her pills. My sister was super afraid of becoming addicted to drugs after watching what my mother and brother were going through. So there was a ton left, and I waited for my brother to come back when I heard him come through his window. His room was next to mine. I went into the kitchen and made him a glass of juice earlier in the day. I had crushed up the pills into a powder, and I mixed them into the juice. I went up to his room, knocked on the door, and offered him the cocktail of various prescription drugs. He took the juice, and right before he was about to drink it, I had thought, how could I do this to my own brother? I snatched the drink back and it spilled all over the carpet. He was high and super pissed, but at least he was alive. I never tried anything like that again. It felt so sick. Wrong, evil. I mean, what type of person thinks about killing their brother? Besides, my brother dying wouldn't make my mother love me anymore. She would have just resented me for living instead of him. So that's the sad, sick story of how I almost executed my brother. I didn't actually carry through with it, obviously, and I guess everyone lived happily ever after. My brother got clean and now has a happy family. I'm in college, my sister's leg healed up nicely, and my mom left us after a while. But that's a story for another time. Story 3 from user Actual Gacy. I have 2 sisters, one older and one younger. My mom worked hard to make sure each of us felt special and loved my dad. Not so much, he called my older sister Princess, and my little sister was referred to as Little Buddy. For whatever reason, I got kind of forgotten about. I didn't mind most of the time. I found my dad annoying, demanding, and at times unreasonable. I hated the way he bullied my mom and would lash out about things that didn't make sense. Basically, I thought of my dad as a total brat. He'd have a bad day at work and would find someone to take it out on. Usually my mom and I. But I still tried. I'd try to cuddle up with him, feeling hurt when he'd shrug me off and tell me I need to shower. I made gifts for him, got good grades, won poetry contests, won awards through Bible quiz, never argued, but it never seemed to work before long. He'd find something to yell at me about things that usually didn't make sense if my little sister and I fought. The whole thing was my fault, my feet turn in. I hated when my dad would come to my sporting events because seeing me run with inturned feet seemed to be humiliating for him. One time I was running from one base to another, feeling exhilaration. Because I'd done it, I'd hit a home run. The smile died on my face when I heard my dad yell, "Run with your feet straight. You look stupid as a teen." My mom really stepped up and started insisting that he was going to leave me alone. He was never physically abusive, but the way he talked to you made you feel like he was trying to say something that would break you. When I was 15. He was almost successful. I went through a couple of really bad months. A friend died, my dog died, we moved, and my mental health was tanking a week after my friend died. Car accident, my dad asked. "So when are you going to get over it?" It took me by surprise because at that time I wasn't crying or acting out. I was just sitting there eating dinner with the family. My mom immediately reacted, gasping out a surprised "John," and the two of them began fighting again, over my dad's need to mess with me. I sat there head down on the table thinking I'm not allowed to be sad I'm not allowed to feel happy. I can get mad. I'm in pain, and he finds it annoying. Just leave me alone. Dad, leave me alone. That's when it clicked, my dad. For whatever reason, seemed to hate me. I could try to make him like me. But it wasn't going to work as I got older. My goal became to avoid him. His seemed to be to forge a relationship with me, with the sole purpose of having a target for his need to bully. We were never going to have a healthy father-daughter relationship. That's when it clicked. It's not me. It's him. My sisters could like and love him, but I didn't need to respect him. I was done trying to please him, trying to do the right things, trying to be the daughter that my dad seemed to want. Fast forward. Almost 10 years later, after the birth of my son, my dad had tried to begin a new relationship with me. Because for whatever reason, he latched onto my kid. For the sake of my kid, I let my dad have a relationship with him. But I was always monitoring, waiting for my son to develop a personality that would change the way my dad saw him. There was no way I was going to let my dad do to my son what he did to me. Fortunately, my dad died before the change could happen. I sat in the back at his funeral, dry-eyed and satisfied. Of course, my sisters were upset. They had good relationships. But for me and my mom, it kind of felt like the Wicked Witch was at long last dead. No more stress, no more unreasonable expectations. The eggshells we'd been walking on were swept away, and we could be content. I have an uncle in West Virginia that I started to see as my father figure. At first, I jokingly would call him Dad, testing the waters, waiting for him to remind me that he actually has kids and doesn't need an adopted daughter. I go see him once a year. But I always felt like maybe he sees my need to see him as a dad to be annoying. A couple of weeks ago, I asked him if he was coming up for Christmas. He said he couldn't, but then he said, "I love you, my daughter." Sorry, this was so long. I guess I needed to get that out. Story 4 from user deleted. I suppose I started the fire, actually. I was the only kid in my family to go to college. I'm from Ireland. So it wasn't a financial decision. I was just the only one who worked hard enough in school to have any chance in my final 2 years of school. I was studying every day, even during summer and winter holidays. From day one, my other 2 siblings were at best showing up for school, except one of them rarely did, and the other showed up high. Most of the time, this was basically the way it went for my entire life. And during that time, my parents had focused their attention on the problem. Children completely ignoring my needs, wants, or achievements. I was left alone to do my homework, or expected to help siblings with homework, even though one of them was older than me and was tackling coursework. I hadn't even encountered, yet they weren't abusive parents, just bad ones. If my brother or sister got straight C's, we'd go out to dinner to celebrate. I scored in the top 5 for math scores in the country twice in a row. The second time, I didn't even get a congratulations. So along comes college, and with it exposure to new ideas. I come out as trans to my parents, which they ignore. Like most things, I say, one sibling goes to work in hotels and eventually around the world on charitourism, working to save turtles and teach kids English. The other eventually moves out of home, gets a job in a hotel. He hates and barely ever calls him stuck at home. It's not common to move out in Ireland if you don't have to during college and not able to work, due to the high workload in college and the long commute. 4 hours a day, siblings end up back and forth of our family home, and we start to fight a lot. I'm not working, so I don't understand the real world. Bear in mind, I'd work 40 hours a week during the summer vacation. I'm not doing well in college anymore. So it's assumed I'm slacking off. I'm still in therapy and on medication for depression brought on by stress and neglect. I eventually go to the United States where I meet my now wife. For the first time, we spend a glorious couple of months together before I have to travel home because yet again, I've failed college. I had 1 class to make up, so I put my future on hold and returned to Ireland. Safe in the knowledge that at least my sister is still in China, except she surprises the whole family by coming home for good 3 days after I get back to cut. An already long story short, I finish college and am a week away from flying back to my now fiancé. We're watching a science documentary together on the television. My sister starts explaining something about it wrong to the youngest sibling. I now have 3, but they're much younger. I correct her, and she tells me I'm wrong when I tell her. I literally have a science degree. The entire reason I'm home at all, she tells me I didn't really graduate college because I didn't have to take another exam. I was allowed to make up my grade. I lose it. I curse her out for being an awful who talks down to everyone at every available opportunity, who hasn't held a real job for 3 years and barely limped her out of high school. I yell at my dad for enabling her shit for so many years, allowing her to walk over family members because she's loud. My mother asks me what's wrong, and I tell her she's raised a hateful, spiteful daughter. I spend the next week at a friend's house before traveling home and packing up my things to load onto the airplane. The night before, my mother tells me she'll get up in the morning to wish my goodbye and good luck as I start my new life in America. She didn't. The fire isn't really that warm. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and write comments. See you later.